Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good mornings, everybody. Welcome back to Theory of Literatures. Today we will discuss about another topics of theory of literature. It is metaphor. Especially, we call it as a conceptual metaphor because what we are going to discuss today is different from the metaphor that you have understood when you were in junior high school or senior high school. Now let's begin discussing about the conceptual metaphor. In this lecture, we will learn about the first metaphor, what is metaphor, especially what is the conceptual metaphor itself, and then the types of conceptual metaphor. But for these sessions, we are focusing ourselves in discussions about what is conceptual metaphor, and about the type of conceptual metaphor we will continue next week. Okay, so what is a metaphor, or the definitions of metaphor? There are two kinds of definitions of metaphor that we have. The first is traditional view, and the second is the modern view. In modern view, we use the cognitive linguistic approach. So in a traditional view, metaphor is always be understood as the figure of speech, or in Indonesia we call it as a majas. Okay. For example, in literatures or in poems, you can find examples. Jack is a lion. You are flower. You are rose, etc. Okay. When you say that you are a rose, it is a metaphor because it is figurative speech comparing you and rose, or here, for example, Jack and lion. So comparing the characteristic of Jack as the characteristic of lion. So in Encyclopedia Britannica says that metaphor is a figure of speech that implies comparison between two unlike entities as distinguished from simile, explicit comparison, signaled by the words like or as. So we have learned it in senior high school, the difference between simile and metaphor. Simile usually use like and as, while metaphor doesn't use like or as. So Jack is a lion is metaphor, while Jack is like a lion, it is simile, right? Now that is the definitions of a metaphor in a traditional view. Metaphor as a figure of speech or as a majas. Now what about metaphor in the modern view? Metaphor in the light of cognitive linguistic approach. Yeah. Here we have two figures, two experts in metaphor. The first is Georg Lakoff and Mark Johnson. They made a book with the title Metaphor We Live By. In their book, they discuss metaphor not as a figure of speech, but they talk metaphor as a concept. So that's why they call it a conceptual metaphor. So what is conceptual metaphor? So according to Georg Lakoff and Mark Johnson, metaphor is a property of concept, not of words. So the main things in metaphor is a concept. When you say Jack and lion, we didn't say about Jack as a human or lion as an animal, but we say about the concept of Jack, concept of characteristic of Jack, and concept of lion itself. And then the second, the functions of metaphor is to better understand a certain concept, not just some artistic or aesthetic purposes. So this what makes metaphor different, conceptual metaphor different from the part of speech, that a conceptual metaphor is aims or function as a means to help us understand a certain concept. For example, when you say that love is blind, we need thousands, even millions of words to understand what love is. But when you say love is blind, you can at least understand about what love is. So the blindness here is a concept to help us understand what love is. Because we know love is a very complicated one. We never find one definition of love because it is too complicated. So to make these complicated things to be easy to understand, we need a metaphor. So we can say love is blind or love is blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it is not just an artistic, not just a figure of speech, not just ornamentals, linguistics. No, it is the way to understand concepts easily. Next, metaphor is often not based on the similarity. Okay, so not all metaphor base themselves in the similarity. For example, as I have mentioned, love is blind. We cannot find the relation, the similarity between love as something abstract and blindness as something real. And there is no similarity between love and the blindness. But we can compare it. We can use blindness to understand the characteristic of love, although they don't have similarity. Next, a metaphor is used effortlessly in everyday life by ordinary people, not just by the special talented people. So according to Georg Slakoff and Mark Johnson, metaphor is not only in poems, metaphor is not only in literature. We find metaphor in our everyday life. And ordinary people use it, although they sometimes they are not aware that they use metaphor because they think that it is belonging to ordinary language. For example, when you say that hidup adalah perjalanan, ya, atau hidup adalah perjuangan, it's already a common language, common expressions we use in our daily life. Yeah? And people will make it without any efforts, and they think that yes, it is normal when we say that ya cinta itu buta, etc. Yeah? It is not a belong to the poems anymore. Okay. Next, metaphor is inevitably process of human thoughts and reasoning. Here, metaphor is understood as the way of our mind think. It is not only a language, it is the way of our mind think. So, as I said, that metaphor can be used to understand complicated concept easily. Yeah. So that's also the way our brain works. Our brain will try to understand the complex concept by comparing with the real or the easy comparisons. For example, it is very difficult to understand about the way of our organ works. Yeah, maybe you have ever learned about biology. You have ever learned about the works of our body organs like a kidney, what is the function of the kidney, lungs, etc., etc. Yeah. Now, to make it easy to be understood, our brain will make a metaphor that human body organs, is like a machine. Yeah. So when you are in during high school, your teacher say in bahasa Indonesia, fungsi lambung adalah untuk menggerus makanan. Ya. Menggerus makanan here is a metaphor that lambung itu seperti mesin. The same, like people said that our brain is like a chipset in a computer or like a processor. Yeah. We know that our brain is very mysterious, complicated. How our brain works, we don't know. But to make it simple, we compare between brain and processor in the computer or laptop. So metaphor is also the way of our reasoning or our brain thinks to make something complicated concept into a simple, easy to understand concept. And the last metaphor is pervasive, both in the thoughts and everyday language. The metaphor is so we can find lots of metaphor in our daily life and in our expressions. We can find lots of metaphor, and uh, people are not aware that it is metaphor because they think that yeah, it is common or usual expressions we use in speaking. For example of conceptual metaphor, here, I'll give you example in English. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 expressions. He is without direction in life. I'm where I want to be in life. I'm at the crossroads in my life. They'll go places in life. He's never let anyone get in his way. She's gone through a lot in life. So you can take a look on the italicized or and bold expressions. For example, here without direction, crossroads, places. Yeah. The question is, where do we usually see the italicized part of the above sentences? In which domain? Yeah. So the words or the expression like without direction, crossroads, places, way, yeah. In what domain we usually find those expressions? The answer is yes, you're right. It is in the domains of journey. So if we talk about journey, if we talk about trips, yeah, journey, we will always use the words like a direction, without direction, crossroads, places, and way, etc. However, uh, in these cases, we use the term of journey in in the terms of to talk about life. Yeah. So life here, we compare life with the journey, life without direction, crossroad in life, um, places in life, etc. Now, from the examples above, we know that metaphor can be defined as understanding one conceptual domain in the term of another conceptual domain. For example, that we try to understand what life is by using the another terms in other conceptual domain as journey. So we want to understand life as a journey. Again, because life is very complicated. Maybe we cannot tell about what is life what is life actually. We cannot talk it. We cannot tell it. But by using comparisons with other conceptual domains, by using a comparison with the journey, we can sum up life, what life is. We can say when we say that life is a journey, yeah, we are easy to understand. All life is a kind of journey. We have to go through a certain way. We have many places to visit. Sometimes we need a direction. When we don't know the places to go, we lost direction, etc. That's it. Okay. So the structure is conceptual domains A is conceptual domains B. Life is journey. A is B. Okay, so this is a structure. A is B. From the expressions of without direction in life, where I want to be in life, crossroads in life, places in life, ways in life, way of life, etc., etc. From those expressions, we can conclude that life is understood as a journey. So we can formulate the conceptual metaphor. Life is a journey. A is B. Okay. Now, we have the term for the structure of a metaphor. A is B. Yeah. Call it as a source domain. What is source domain? Source domain is the conceptual domain from which we draw metaphorical expressions to understand another conceptual domain. Okay, source, sumber. Yeah. While second, the target domain. So, target domain is a conceptual domain that is understood this way. So in the metaphor of life is a journey, yeah, life is a target domain, while journey is a source domain. Life is a target domain. Why? Because life here is the concept that we want to understand. What is life? We want to understand about life. While journey is the source domain, because journey here as the concept which help us to understand about life. Yeah, so that's why we call it a source domain. Okay. There are another examples of conceptual metaphor that we can find in the English expressions. For example, An argument is war. Debate is war. So when we talk about argument, we talk about debate, there will be always um, vocabularies that related to the war. For example, your claims are indefensible. Defense. He attack the weakest points. Weak point, attack, defense, indefensible. His criticisms were right on target. Target, demolish. I demolish his argument. And the book won the arguments, won or defeat or uh, lose, etc. You disagree? Okay, shoot. If you use the strategy, he'll wipe you out. What's shoot strategy? You shut down all of my argument. Okay, so from the expression of indefensible, attack on the weak points, right on target, and then demolish, and then shoot, wipe out, strategy, shut down, etc. From those all expressions, we can conclude that debate or argument is understood as a war. So that's why we can formulate the metaphor that argument is war. A is B. Another examples of conceptual metaphor is love is journey. How can we find that love is a journey? Let's take a look on the expressions. Look how far we've come. We are at the crossroads. We'll just have to go our separate way. We cannot turn back now. I don't think the relationship is going anywhere. We are stuck. It's been a long, bumpy road. We've gotten on track, and the relationship is dead and straight. So from the expression of come, how far we've come, crossroads, separate ways, um, relationship is go anywhere, bumpy roads, track, dead end street, the relationship is a dead end street. Yeah, we can conclude that from those expressions, love is understood as a journey. So the metaphor is love is journey. A is B. Okay. It is in English. In other culture, for example, in Indonesia, yeah, maybe we will have different metaphor for love. So we are rarely say that ya cinta kita sudah di ujung jalan atau di jalan yang buntu. It is weird, but sometimes we say hubungan kita putus, putus, or cinta kita di ujung tanduk, for example, like that. From the expression of love in Bahasa Indonesia, you can also formulate the metaphor of love in Indonesia that may be different from the metaphor of love in English. Okay. Next example is ideas are food. All this paper has in it are a raw fact, half baked. Half baked. Bake is a way of cooking. Half baked, setengah matang. Here are too many facts here for me to digest them all. Digest here in Indonesia is pencernaan, digestions. Okay. I just cannot swallow the claim. Swallow here it means menelan, climb. Let me stew over that for a while. That's food for thoughts. Food for thoughts. She devour the books, etc. So from all of the expressions like half bake, digest, swallow, stew, food for thoughts, devour, etc. All those expressions are related to foods. So that's why we can formulate the metaphor that ideas are foods, A is B. Yeah. And then again, those expressions are normal. It is used in a daily conversation. Yeah. So people are not aware that it is metaphor. They think that it is, yeah, this is usual. This is common expressions. However, for us, we can formulate it as a metaphor, or we call it as a conceptual metaphor, and it's everywhere, and it's the way of our brain think. Okay. Now the last, I would like to give you exercise. Yeah, the exercise is find the metaphor of pendidikan in bahasa Indonesia. Okay, so you can find many texts. You can try to look on, for example, in the dictionary or in the article, in website, in the blogspot, in people's notes, etc. Lots of text you can find. Yeah. Find the expression about pendidikan. Yeah. And then after you can find the expression about pendidikan, yeah, try to formulate, merumuskan, formulate the metaphor of pendidikan in Indonesia. Pendidikan adalah apa? Okay. Yeah, that's all for today. Next week, we'll go to types of conceptual metaphor, structural, ontological, and oriental types of conceptual metaphor. Thank you. Have a nice day. Oh yeah, the exercise for today, you can upload it in Google Classroom. Yeah, nicely typed, diketik, and then upload it in the Google Classroom. That's all. Thank you very much. If you have some questions, you can type it in the comments. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.